वेलकम बैक नाज़रीन चुत प्रोग्राम जे सिलसिले के अॻिते वधायूं पंहिंजा जेके मिस्र ऐं इंडोनेशिया जा जेके दोस्त आहिनि उन सां पंहिंजी गुफ़्तगू हली पए सोशल मीडिया जे हवाले सां ऐं सोशल मीडिया जे हवाले सां पाण गुफ़्तगू पिया कई त सोशल मीडिया ते जेके रेस्ट्रिक्शंस गवर्नमेंट्स आणनि था पारां लॻनि थियूं उन्हनि खे कीअं रोके सघिजे थो ऐं सोशल मीडिया जो जेको मिसयूज़ थिए थो उन खे रोकण लाइ कहिड़ा तरीक़ेकार हुजणु घुरिजनि अचो त उन गुफ़्तगू खे अॻिते वधायूं वेल मोहम्मद बिफोर गोइंग टू द ब्रेक आई वाज आस्किंग we were on the point where Ong was talking about the restriction from the government. So when we talk of social media, we have two kind of problems. One, the government sometimes restrict so many websites. They block the websites. Right. They have that kind of power. The governments have power. So when they do this, it means all that luxury we use that has been blocked. So what kind of measures or what kind of rules and regulations or what kind of measures can be taken so that government should not be able to block this kind of thing? Number one. Number two, we see when we talk about social media, we see the misuse of social media. So many people sometimes cartoons about the religious sentiments of the people, sometimes about the communal sentiments of the people, sometimes ethnic sentiments of the people are being heard by the social media. So because there is no rules and regulation or the monetary or the regulatory system, that's why anyone can use anything and that can hurt anyone. So this aspect of social media, how do you see in both these things?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. Well, let's take it from the general to the specific. Generally speaking, I think the government should not interfere with internet at all. Internet should be free. People should have access to information if they so wish. That's the general point. Now, very often the governments in less democratic countries will block certain websites either because they are pandering to some group within the government, within the country, or more commonly because they want to protect themselves. So you'd have countries that would block certain websites. So some would block certain keywords. You can't, search for certain words. If you're in China, there's a number of words that you cannot Google. Egypt was one of them for a very brief period of time. You couldn't Google Egypt when you're in China. So they're trying to protect themselves. Well.
Can we, all those who are the user of the social media, can we have any measure so that we can stop the governments to block or?
Well, yes. There are two ways. As an individual, you can use. There's a number of tools that are available for people to use the internet to circumvent this kind of blocks. Some of them is what you call proxy servers, or what they call VPN, virtual private networks, which is very easy to set up. It's like if anybody wants to, look that on the internet, VPN or proxy servers, and learn how to use it. It's very simple. It allows you to circumvent government blocking of certain websites. But however, more importantly, you have to have an organized effort, because not everybody will go through the hassle of trying to set up those networks on their computers. So you have to really pressure the government, remind the government that information does not belong to them, it belongs to people. Therefore, people should have access to this information. So you need to pressure the government, pressure the parliament, or have a heavy campaign that can start online. It's like we have many online campaigns that start successfully. Lebanon is one case. They demonstrate for freedom of information on the internet. I think in March this year and the year before. So there are tools that you can access as a user, but you also need a general effort to get the government to get their hands off the internet. That's very important.
Rebecca, what do you have take on this question?
Yeah, I think that as far as legislation, I think it would be great, but enforcement is always the issue. Like the Egyptian government, we discovered was using a software bought from a private company to monitor and surveil our social media communications, Skype and Gmail and Facebook and everything. So I don't think a legislation would help this, but we see a lot of times in these situations an international effort to overcome these barriers. So when you have internet restriction, you also have individual tech-savvy people who are coming up with applications to go around it, like I think Haystack and some of these programs that can help with the restrictions. But also, I think it's a very important point that social media is not existing by itself on its own. So if there are restrictions or if there are movements that are dangerous or something, there's also the possibility to not only engage with that against it, you know, creating some kind of positive movement against it through social media, but also in real life. So like the initiative that my friends and I work on, we use social media to mobilize in the streets, you know, to plan real life events and engage with society. And so I think this is a possibility as well. When you have restrictions from one end, you can mobilize people to make some kind of positive action against it.
And what about the misuse of the social media? Which the efforts which are being used to hurt the sentiments of the people?
Like hate speech and this kind of thing?
Yes, hate speech, yeah, or the as we have seen the cartoons of the and so things like that, which hurt the sentiments, religious sentiments, or the ethnic sentiments, or the communal sentiments of the people. So because do we are the users of the social media, do we suggest that there should be a regulatory or monetary system for the social media, or it should be fully free?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, but I really believe that social media is just another tool, like the telephone, and the television, and I think that when there is someone misusing, these people are usually not the majority in the world. I think maybe I have an optimistic view of the global opinion, but I think that these represent small groups and extreme groups, and so those of us who don't have these points of view, I think we should be using social media just like any other tool in the rest of our lives to put forth a positive counteraction to this.
What counteraction should be there?
So, for example, with the cartoons, this is an example of terrible hate speech. But if there's no other side, like a moderate side, showing what the majority of people actually think and can dialogue peacefully about a sensitive issue like this, then this is, I think, where the real harm comes, because it affects the opinion of an entire group. Then, like, these people are allowed to speak for a whole population that they're not in reality representing. So I think our role as community members or members of a society or a population of a certain group is to put forth our moderate opinions in a peaceful, constructive way to balance and to show that these cartoons, for example, don't represent the larger opinions.
You know, Rebecca, the criminal segment is always the very
it's true.
That is a minority segment of the society. The criminals are always in each and every society. Criminals are in the very thin minority, but we have the policing system, we have the so many police stations, and we have so many ammunition for the police to control that very thin minority. So if we have this kind of thin minority in the social media, so for that we should have regulation or regulatory system. Otherwise we cannot that will always spark any kind of uprising in the whole of the world, as we have seen so many times. So Mr. Ong,
I actually have got a slightly different view. Just to take Rebecca's metaphor of tools. You know, if you only have a hammer, every problem that you have starts to look like a nail, right? So you know, all you do is hammer it. Why a lot of governments seek to censor, seek to control the net, is that they do not understand that a revolution, a technological revolution has taken place. The web moved from 1.0 to 2.0. 2.0 is all about interaction. During this transition, what actually has happened is this. Before, you could control a lot of things. You could control the media. You could censor it, etc. And governments are used to that. In that world, the 1.0 world, the law of the jungle prevails. Who is strongest, who's got the most resources, will win. And governments inevitably will win because they have a state apparatus behind them. But then something happened, we moved into a 2.0 world. Web 2.0 is all about engagement. In this world, you could be a lone person, your voice is virtually as equal as a state government or a huge company. So what you see is that everyone is equal. Now, if everyone is equal in the net, then who comes out ahead? Is the person. Think of the metaphor of the law of the campfire. Think of the campfire. In a campfire, someone who tells the best stories is most engaging, most entertaining, gives you information that you want. That's the person that stays ahead. So I think the answer to both questions really is that, you know, governments and other institutions, businesses for instance, they must realize that the world has changed. And in this world, new skills are needed. New skills on how to engage, new skills on how to talk to people, how to confront your critics because people can criticize. And on the net, sure, you have a few people doing that. Again, you know, for instance, like the cartoons on the Prophet, hate speeches, etc. The provoking question perhaps is, what are the institutions being maligned doing to engage people on the net, right? If it's, for instance, if it's religion, are the religious organizations engaging in a, you know, in a either informative, engaging way with their audiences? If not, aren't you by default allowing other people to take over your audience? So it's a new world that we all live in, and very exciting times.
But my questions are again they need really the answer from you, whether there should be a regulatory system to control this kind of misuse of the social media, or it should be free, as we always demand that information should be access to information, and these information institutions and information tools should be free of any kind of regulatory system or any kind of monitoring system.
I would be against regulation, primarily because if you look at the social media ecosystem, it's a self-correcting ecosystem. Because, you know, if you have people pushing it too far, others will come in and weigh in and say, look, you're out of line. Same thing. Take, for example, again, this thing that Pakistan knows very well, the Facebook thing where, you know, you've got cartoons of the Prophet. How many people on the internet supported it? Perhaps a few. Majority just felt it was unreasonable.
But there were the processions of thousands of the people, not only in Pakistan but in so many countries of the world against. Right. So only one effort of a criminal-minded people on the social media has triggered a sense of anger in thousands and millions of the people. So this, don't you think that we need some kind of regulatory mechanism to stop this kind of things?
Again, I think, you know, that's the question. How do you engage people? How do you win the hearts and minds of people today in the Web 2.0 world? If you have processions, if you get angry at it, you come down hard on it. those guys win because you start to look unreasonable. It's a bit like terrorism. What do terrorists want? They want to provoke reaction. You know, they want to be renowned. They want to seek revenge. But reaction and renown are two elements that they seek. So if you do that, if they do something, you react. Indonesia, for instance, treated terrorism, and again, the parallels between Indonesia and Pakistan is just remarkable. We had a terrorist problem. We were beset by bombs. But what did the government do? The government treated it as a civil matter. It's a police matter. So the police were investigating the crimes instead of the military.
Terrorism, what is the cause of terrorism?
We had, you know, these people aligned to Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
So you had these religious extremists. You know, I must say that, you know, Indonesia is is the largest Muslim country, and most of the Muslims are very tolerant. You know, they're very cool people. It's only a very minority of people there. And again, you know, there is no support there.
Arab are cool people, really?
We try to be. We do our best. No, look, the problem with regulation is that it's a slippery slope. Okay? It's like, I mean, okay.
No,
so
now I move to another aspect of it.
Okay, sure.
Actually, we all are from the Muslim countries, Muslim societies, and we have, as Ong was saying, that we have some kind of a problem of fundamentalism or whatever that is. And similarly was when we were talking about and we were watching the TV shows, and we were reading the newspapers, and so many people were very much curious and were worried about that Akhwan al-Muslimin is a bit fundamentalist party, or they have if they take the lead of this procession, that could be very much dangerous for the society, for the regional peace. So we all societies have same kind of threat. Now I would like to ask whether this social media, what is the role of social media to cool down or to level the playing field for all of us of our societies? Do you think it has a role?
Well, okay,
when we talk about the fundamentalism or the terrorism which our societies face?
Okay, well, I mean, the first thing to remember here is that, you know, internet penetration, especially in developing countries, is still very low. It's like only between 25 and 30% of the population, I guess, in Egypt and Pakistan have access to internet. So if we're talking about social media, we're talking about a small segment of the population. A large part of it, we have to find different ways of engagement. But the bottom line is still the same. Whether you're communicating via social media or by papers and articles or face to face, the message remains the same. What you have to do is, like, you know, in face of damaging ideas, you have to give counter ideas. Okay. Now maybe you want to set the limit at you know, incitement to violence. If someone is distributing information asking people to kill a certain group, then this is where, you know, we need to intervene. But generally speaking, you know, as long as everybody agrees to a certain set of rules, then everybody's allowed to express their opinion and to try to talk to people. Now, you mentioned Ikhwan Muslimin in Egypt, which is the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, I think that as long as they abide by the same rules of the political game as everybody else, they are allowed to compete as everybody else. They try to, you know, give their point of view. Other people try to give their point of view, and you know, it's like, and I mean, that's how politics function, right? The idea is that even if you disagree, you're not allowed to block them, right? Within the rules of the political game. And you know, it's like may the best ideas win.
Your country and your society has different kind of experience. I would like to have a viewpoint of Rebecca, and then I would like to talk with Ong, because they have people who take guns, as he was talking that there is a terrorism, and they take guns to impose their idea, and they also use social media for their activities.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, if we people who are peace-loving people, can we use this social media to have a good impact on the society, to negate those kind of activities? Rebecca, please.
Yeah, I agree completely that I think it can have a positive impact. I think that social media as a tool, it decreases the isolation of some of these people that have I don't know, maybe they feel marginalized or not heard. And constructive dialogue, like Mohammed was saying, like having may the best idea win. This kind of format, I think, can go a long way in counteracting that.
Last.
Right. Well, Indonesia, I mean, we had a huge problem. It's still a problem, but again, it's a very minority that's doing this. How social media can be used? We actually have got a very good example of it. A few years ago, when terrorists bombed the Ritz-Carlton and Marriott Hotel in Jakarta at the same time, and the twin bombings, the onliners actually got on Twitter and they said, no, we refuse to be afraid. So they came up with this hashtag, Indonesia Unite, to show how united Indonesians were. It became a trending topic on Twitter throughout the world. So in that very small instance, Indonesians actually defeated the terrorists. On Twitter, they weren't afraid. The message they got through was that Indonesia was united.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you very much, Muhammad. And it was really good to talk about you, and I really need much more time to have a talk about. I wanted to talk about the Bali, the tourism of Bali and what is conditions there, especially after those bombings, and if it has recovered or not, and especially the socio-political situations of Indonesia and Egypt. But the time is limited, and I hope we will meet again. I wish we can meet again and we can have a discussion, same discussion. Thank you very much again. नाज़रीन गुफ्तगू तां ॿुधी प्रोग्राम जो वक़्तु पूरो थिए थो। पंहिंजे मेज़बान फयाज़ नाइच खे इजाज़त सदाईं गॾु।